Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back for another Sunday of Faith in Our Hometown, our weekly discussion as people of faith in the greater Joplin area to try to make our community a little bit better and a little bit stronger every time we turn around. It is the beginning of April, and this week there is yet another election with another bond issue that is kind of important for us as people of the area. Again, I am never fond of telling people how to vote, but I want to make sure that you know what the issues are so that when you go to vote, which I do think you should do, so I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but I'm going to tell you to go vote. All right, and you need to figure out how you're going to vote on this issue. And so to talk about the school, which is a school issue, a school bond issue for the ballot, we've got our superintendent of schools here in the Joplin area, Dr. Melinda Moss, and we've also got one of the members of the Joplin Board of Education, Dr. Debbie Fort. So we're going to be back to talk to them in just a moment about the bond issue. And so settle in, and we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute.
I was in shock, and in denial, and I couldn't believe it was me. I was healthy, feeling well, but unbeknownst to me, after the colonoscopy, I found out that I had colon cancer. My name is Mario Guerrero. I'm an ethicist. I help people that are in a hospital and the medical staff process some of the difficult situations. In this case, it was the other way around.
Well, I'm glad they caught it earlier.
On my 50th birthday, I had a regular checkup. I wasn't concerned because I felt well. No family history of this type of cancer, and yet I developed this type of cancer. During the process of the colonoscopy, they were able to remove that polyp. And having that done within the hospital setting, they can just address all the issues right there and then. I'm a great believer in early detection. This is such a silent disease, and you really don't necessarily have symptoms. Go get checked. Follow up with your physician. Don't wait.
Well, again, thanks for joining us on this Sunday morning here for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest, Dr. Melinda Moss, who's the superintendent of our Joplin school system, and one of the board members for the school board, Dr. Debbie Fort. So thank you, ladies, for joining me this morning. And so let's just talk a little bit about this bond issue and why it's important for us, and so that we can give everybody some of the facts about and let them decide whether they want to vote for it or not.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important to all of us, whether you have children in the Joplin schools or not, because a strong schools district then attracts a strong community and vice versa.
Right.
So we're all in this together, and it is about safety for our elementary students. It's about equity for our elementary students, because not all of our facilities right now are equitable. And it's about being fiscally responsible, because we are able to do this with a no tax increase bond issue. So that means that property taxes will stay the same regardless of the vote. And we're wanting to combine Columbia and West Central into a new location at Dover Hill, as well as add on an addition to our Kelsey Norman Elementary School.
Okay. And how's that going to happen without raising the taxes and doing all that kind of good stuff?
Well, in 2013, the voters did approve a 91-cent debt service levy. So at that time, the district built what it intended to build, and that is a 20-year bond. If we do nothing different, that bond will not expire until 2033. But over time, since 2013, we've had business and industry come into town. We've had new homes built. There has been appreciation of properties such that the 91-cent debt service levy that exists now is generating money sufficient to pay those bonds, but there is excess money that it is generating. So if the voters approve, in April we would issue another 20-year bond that would run concurrently, and that one would expire in 2040. So with the funds that 91-cent debt service levy is generating, we can make the payments on both bonds. So this is a rare moment in time where we have the bonding capacity to generate the funds necessary for the project without having to raise taxes.
Which is, nobody likes to raise taxes, but I'm one of those people that also says, And I'm glad we're not having to do that this time. Okay.
Right.
But I'm one of those people that also says, paying taxes in some ways kind of a sacred trust. You got to pay taxes in order to have a good, strong structure.
Right.
Now, you never want to see your money wasted, no matter who you're giving it to. You never want to see it wasted. But at the same time, if we don't do some of it, we're not going to have what we need in order to make it down the road.
Right, because it matters to our community and our ability to attract and retain quality doctors to serve in our hospitals and keep our workforce strong, keep our property values up. So that infrastructure is important. And I can tell you that our tax levy is less than most of our neighbors, and it is certainly less than the state average school tax levy. So we're being good stewards with the money that our taxpayers are entrusting us to do.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think, your reputation's pretty good in that regard.
Well, thank you.
I'm just saying from most of the things that I've heard is that most people believe that the school systems are, I can just tell you from running our Catholic schools, okay? We're not a refuge. In so many other places in the state and across the country, our Catholic schools are kind of the refuge that people want to get away from the public school to come to us because they don't like what's going on in the public school, or they don't like how things are being run, or they don't like the way their money's being spent. And so sometimes they'll look to private education to rescue them from what's going on in the public schools.
Gotcha.
We're blessed in this area. We are blessed in this area. I've told you and some of your predecessors and some of the people who work with you, if you guys would do a bit worse job running those schools, our schools might be better off. But nonetheless, we don't want that for any of our young. We don't want that for any of our kids, that we're not doing a good job at educating them and helping raise them up. And so congratulations, and we're glad that you guys are doing the good jobs that you are, because I can tell you that we'd have more refugees, if you will, if you weren't producing a good product and giving our kids a lot of their due. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
So is the controversy, because I know there's a little bit of concern, flying around when you first came up with the idea of combining a couple schools, because everybody's worried about if it's not going to be in my neighborhood, how does all that stuff going to work? Is that kind of, have we put most people's hearts and minds to rest on that?
I think as people have learned more and more about the proposal, they're coming to accept it and understand the rationale behind it. Columbia Elementary and West Central are both buildings that were built in the 1920s. And if you think about public education in the 1920s, we weren't considering occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, learning disability resource, all the things and services that we provide now that weren't conceived in the 1920s.
Right.
And as well, those buildings have kitchens and they have cafeterias now. They weren't designed to feed breakfast, lunch, dinner. We've had to make do and cobble up all those kinds of spaces. And then finally, in both buildings, you find very tiny, small classroom spaces.
Right.
Because in the 20s, we sat at a wooden chair that perhaps had a sleeve that we folded over to sometimes write on, and it was very much a lecture-oriented delivery. Nowadays, our employers are telling us, we want students that can converse. We want students that can collaborate. We need to be able to work on projects together. And so when you're trying to move kids about and do those things in those small rooms compared to other rooms in our district, it's very difficult. And you find you're stepping over one child to get to the other, and storage is an issue. So all of our campuses across the district have between 900 and 1,100 square feet. But at West Central and Columbia, those classrooms at the most are 651 square feet.
Yeah.
So
and that's what you were talking about earlier in terms of equity and
yes,
making sure that all the students are treated the same no matter which part of the district they're
exactly, and
Yes.
we want to provide the same quality education for all of our students. And then the safety issue is very prevalent in terms of the structural issues at Columbia. And we've got a lot of cracking and settling and issues that really at this point cannot be mitigated. So we're on borrowed time in being able to stay in Columbia at all. And then West Central's issue is it is right next to 7th Street.
Yes.
And 7th Street has become a
Don't be-
4-lane
don't be-
highway.
Well, it's busy. Don't be bad mouthing our 7th Street right down there in the neighborhood.
The history of 7th Street, we're at 66. That is a prime location for
Sure it is.
something.
Yes.
But
It's
probably
just
not for a
not a
school.
prime location for a public school, because at the end of the day, what do our babies want to do?
Run home.
They just want to run home. And that is the fear of the teachers at West Central in trying to keep them back from that 40-mile-an-hour traffic that tends to run through there.
Yeah, I'm glad we're a couple blocks off of it. It just makes it, it provides just enough cushion for us, but it's, we're not really worried about, about that, when you're off a few blocks. And most of our kids are coming from all over the city anyway, but in the neighborhoods, I understand why that would be a little bit more of a concern, to do some of those things.
Yeah, so they're both small.
Yeah.
They're small schools. So even with combining them, it will still be a school of 400, and that's still a relatively small elementary school by today's standards.
Yeah.
And additionally, if I could add, Kelsey Norman also still has a trailer where students are educated. I'm not sure what grade level is in there.
Oh, it varies from year to year, but we are serving students in classrooms there at Kelsey Norman, and they're also lacking art and music space. The counseling program does not have a dedicated space, and then a lot of our special education programs are happening in the hallways right now because they have simply outgrown their facility.
Yeah. It is. It's one of our time managers where you kind of make do with what you've got and try to make sure that it's working. Right. But when you get the opportunity to maybe to fix some of those things all at the same time, sometimes you just take the leap of faith and you run and do it because you've got the opportunity that's presenting itself at a given point in time to make sure that some of it can happen. Yeah. Debbie, you're on the board itself. Was this, I'm just going to ask the question, I'm not around for most of those meetings. I got enough of my own school board meetings to go to. But in terms of that, was this a kind of a no-brainer for the board, or would you guys, or was it contentious, or?
Oh, it's a no-brainer. This is, as a district, we have been looking to do this for over 10 years. Prior to the tornado, we had a community committee that walked every elementary, every middle, and looked at the facilities. And even as long as 10, 12 years ago, the recommendation was that Columbia and West Central needed some help. And we were on the trajectory to take care of those buildings, and then the tornado happened, and it just shifted our focus to other
whole different
things.
Ballgame for a while. Yeah.
But now we have a beautiful district full of beautiful new buildings and remodeled buildings, except for these two schools who are in these almost 100-year-old buildings, and then Kelsey, who has the space issue.
Don't be bad-mouthing 100-year-old buildings now. There's nothing wrong with 100-year-old buildings.
However, old buildings.
Sometimes you got to repurpose some of that stuff for other uses, and I get that. So,
when Dr. Moss was talking about the classroom, one thing that really stands out, because I was at Irving prior, is in a classroom of that age, you might have one or two electrical outlets.
Yeah.
Now we might have 20 computers in a classroom and an overhead projector, and there's just not enough outlets.
There you go.
But for me, the big issue is safety. I do not like having students outside in trailers away from the main building. That's just not a good situation
Well, it's
at
not
all.
optimal. It is, you've got what you got. I know you would not put your students in anything that was really unsafe.
Right.
But at the same time, if it can improve, well, then why wouldn't you in some ways do some of that,
And for us to have the opportunity that we have now, that may never come around again, where we can give all of our students equal access and not raise taxes 1 penny, unheard of.
Well, it's certainly an interesting moment for us, and maybe a moment of opportunity if everybody agrees with you, in terms of the election in a couple of days. So my guests this morning, Dr. Melinda Moss and Dr. Debbie Fort. Melinda is our superintendent of schools here in our Joplin school system, and Debbie is on the school board, with the Joplin Board of Education. So we're going to be right back after a quick break. Don't go away.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for Faith in Our Hometown this week. We're talking about why some people, at least, are recommending and putting before the people a bond issue that will kind of extend what we kind of been doing, not raising any new taxes, but extending that period of time, and just kind of improving some of what we've got, and trying to make some of our buildings safer and more secure. So the safety issue is a big thing for a lot of people.
It is.
And so talk a little bit more about the safety issue, because I know that does concern folks.
Right. Well, in 2014, Columbia was the last elementary site to get a safe room with the FEMA grant money and the concerns about student safety. The district endeavored first to put that on the southeast side of the 1920 structure, and discovered that there were some very significant mine feature in that area, and caused that site to then have to move to the southwest corner. That's only a 2.3 acre campus in total.
It is small, yeah.
And so now what we're having, due to unsuitable soils, is that on that southwest corner, that FEMA safe room started cracking pretty quickly after it was built. And we've had engineers out there to look at that. Our first attempt to fix did not fix it. And so then, after going back to the drawing board and time is passing, the last bid that we put out for a helical pier type fix at Christmas, no contractors were willing to take those bids. And at this point, what we're hearing is no warranty. It's just not fixable. And if you go back and look at some of the old Missouri Southern University mining maps, you can see the mine feature on the southwest part of the building. So in the 1920s part, that kind of woke up that site, and small problems that had been there for years suddenly accelerated. So now if you're on the second floor in the 4th grade classroom and you look down to the library below you, where that back wall and side wall is separating, you can see the classroom below.
Yep.
So we've had to put crack monitors all over that campus. And we have engineers that are reading those crack monitors regularly, and then they send those movement reports to those that analyze, is it still safe for occupancy? And what Neil Tapana, in one of his opinions, told us during the facilities considerations was that we might have about 2 years left there. But
before you get to the point where it might be unsafe.
Unsafe for occupancy. We've had to close this FEMA safe room. We cannot go in that. So we really are on an urgent timeline to try to fix that. So not only the traffic proximities, the issues with handicapped accessibility, and then just access to emergency vehicles, it's just all come to the point that we can no longer kick the issue down the alleyway. We've got it. We have to deal with it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I don't know whether all of our viewers know this. I mean, anybody that's been in Joplin any period of time needs to understand that so much of the area, and especially in the downtown area and everything, so many of those areas were undermined.
Yes.
You know, in terms of, and you know, I mean, that's where the word comes from.
Yes.
And we live it, you know, all the
Yes.
time. You know, it's, you know, all of a sudden, you know, just like, you know, everybody, before you build anything new or do that stuff, you know, you got to check to see what was underneath it and all that stuff. It's just amazing. So yeah, I can see if that's starting to shift and is now making it very difficult then for you to be able to do that. Why that, again, that would be of concern. What is anybody on the negative side of this? What would they say? I mean, just in fairness, what would they tell us? Why would they not be in favor of this?
Well, one thing from my experiences of prior working in the district is we don't like to lose the neighborhood school concept. We like the ability, and I totally relate to that, having been at Irving. But sometimes you reach the point of no return, and we have to do what's best for the students, and that is giving them a new facility. We had a committee made up of patrons in the community and school people, and they looked at many sites and arrived at Dover Hill because it was a fiscally responsible decision. It was conveniently located to the current neighborhood. And then when they designed the building, they incorporated a lot of features from Columbia and West Central into the building itself, which I think is great.
So
we don't want to forget the past.
There's some of the history there, and some of the feel of some of those other buildings there as well. Yeah. You know, all right. So maybe some concern that we're losing our neighborhood feel for our schools, although you've spoken to maybe at least it was considered while you were doing
Absolutely.
this, even if somebody would disagree, you've at least tried to make sure that you kept that in mind.
We looked at many properties.
Yeah.
Made many phone calls to
Yeah.
try to locate property.
Yeah, and we wanted to keep it as close to the West Central and Columbia zone as we could.
Yes.
But any vacant land that you find in that area, you find out there's a reason it's vacant land.
Yes.
And
Like again, undermined, those kinds of
mining,
things.
reclamation issues, what
Yes.
have you. And for today's schools, you really need more acreage than the Columbia and the West Central site currently, because it's never good practice to have your buses mixing with car traffic. You need adequate parking. There's just so many things today that goes into those considerations that maybe weren't thought of 90 to 100 years ago when those campuses were built. But we've started working in close with Crossland Construction. They will be our construction management firm, and they're working hand in hand with Corner Greer Architecture to make sure that what we are designing and proposing is buildable, and also that it will stay on budget. And so that's part of that commitment that we are making, that we will deliver a quality product and it will be, fiscally responsible.
Yeah. So, in terms of that, so other than the neighborhood feel, any other negative things or other criticisms that you've heard to this point in time?
That is the main thing that I heard, and my response to that, having been a building principal, is the building is not the school, it's the people in the building that make that school, much like your church.
Sure.
And you can have that neighborhood school feel inside that building, even if there are more students inside.
Well, and again, I guess I listen to it and I go, okay, so we're going from 200 in the building to 400 in the building. I guess that will be probably for at least, I'm thinking with the kids, for the first 2 hours, that might be a little different. Or like when they show up for school, it might be a little bit different. But once they're in the classrooms, it's really not going to seem all that different. I mean, they'll have a lot bigger rooms to ramble around in.
Yes.
But most of the time, they're going to like that. I mean, I'll go back to, for us, post-tornado, when we lost the St. Mary's Elementary School building, and before we figured out what we were going to do. So we had them for a while. We retrofitted the Simpson building and put them in that building, and they wound up with more room in the schools. And then you turn around, and when we moved them out to the new place, it was just like suddenly you had these great big rooms, and it was just like, it was like Christmas for everybody, and for the teachers and for the kids, because they suddenly had all this room, which was more than they had in their temporary or in their old incarnation. We loved the old building, and everybody was sentimentally attached to it. But the bottom line is that I don't think anybody would argue that the school itself, when we had a chance to rebuild it according to those modern principles, and some of the the bigger concerns that we didn't think we were really blessed after it had occurred, that suddenly we finally had enough space to do some of the things that we were limited in what we were able to do prior to that.
Absolutely.
Right, and our facility committee toured numerous campuses as they honed in what they felt was the most emergent needs. And that was part of, you don't realize what you're missing without a state-of-the-art adequate facility until then you go see what other buildings are able to offer.
Yes.
And so that brings us back to the issue of equity.
Well, and again, we're a little spoiled here in Joplin in terms of the facilities. Our public school. I mean, let's face it. We suffered so much after the tornado, but suddenly our buildings all became state of the art. The ones that we had to replace, and then it kind of you put that side by side with some of the ones that you've been living in for many years, and suddenly it looks like that. I mean, sometimes. We even have that issue ourselves in our own Catholic school system. I was just like, well, you start looking at, St. Mary's, and you go, wow, boy, that's all brand spanking new. And then you look at some of the other buildings, you go, my high school's been here for a little while. But, you make the best of what you got. You do what you can. And but I just look at this and go, gosh, I mean, if we can do this without, a raise in our property taxes, it seems to me like, and this is just me, so again, not trying to tell you how to vote, but, to me, I don't know that we ever get ourselves hurt by preparing and investing in our future, which is our kids. So it's one of those things.
I would look at it like this. It's Christmas in April for about 700 students. The rest of our 5,300 students are enjoying beautifully up-to-date buildings, and these 700 students do not have that advantage. And so for us to be able to go on April 7th and vote yes, to give these 700 students equitable facilities, equitable opportunities, how can we not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's one opinion. I thank you for being honest about some of the negative viewpoints, because I think that that's important. Because I think as everybody does, you've got to make an informed decision. But what I am going to say to everybody is, you need to go vote.
Yes.
I don't ever take no for an answer in that regard. You know, no matter what the issues are for us as a city, or or as a state, or as a country. That's just the way that we exercise our civic responsibility. It's such a blessing that we get a voice in all this anyway.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
that we get a voice in it as taxpayers, that we get a voice in it as citizens of the community. And I just want to say to everybody, educate yourself on the issue. If you heard something today, come back and ask some more questions. Call, do what you got. You got a couple of days to do that before you go vote on Tuesday. But I am going to say to you, go vote on Tuesday. Okay? All right. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute.
Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths in the U.S., and now we have an effective tool to screen for it. A low-dose CT uses a lower amount of radiation than a standard chest CT.
Breathe in.
Better detailed pictures than a chest x-ray of small abnormal areas of the lung. A person must be between 55 to 77 years old, asymptomatic, which means they don't have any symptoms such as coughing up blood, chronic cough, shortness of breath, unusual weight loss, or any other worrisome symptoms. They must also be a current smoker or have quit within the past 15 years, also must have a 30-pack year history or more, which equates to smoking 1 pack a day for 30 years, or 2 packs a day for 15 years. People generally avoid these scans possibly due to fear of what could be found. Like many other cancers, if we can detect lung cancer early, it could be very treatable and life-saving.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning here at Faith in Our Hometown. This week is an important week for us as people in Joplin. We get to determine whether or not we're going to extend our bond issue, and for no extra money than we've been paying and not raising our property taxes, the ability to perhaps improve our school system in terms of providing for safer and maybe more equitable, and certainly in a very fiscally responsible way to make sure that all those things are being taken care of at the same time. Again, you've got to figure out how you want to vote. You've got to exercise that responsibility as a member of the community. If you didn't like those arguments and you think the other arguments went out, then go vote your conscience anyway. But go vote and continue to make Joplin as strong as we can possibly make it, okay? Because one way or another, we've got to do right by our kids, and we got to do right by our community. And for those of us who believe in God, we got to do right by God too. So come join us again next Sunday morning for another Faith in Our Hometown. Go out and vote on Tuesday. God bless you. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.